We haven't officially celebrated your birthday on on a live podcast. Just
That's
realized that.
true. Yeah, it was my birthday last week, a week ago today, actually.
Jesse just turned 25.
25. Can you guys believe it?
The over under on you being 25, we would get a 50-50 split on the
Oh,
bets.
think so? I don't know.
I think the only thing that would hurt you is if people know you have four kids and it's like, four kids by 25, that might be a stretch these days.
Yeah, I had one kid at 25,
Not bad.
but only just in the nick of time. I turned 26 like 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later.
So we do have six people watching now. We're gonna do some question and answer stuff with the audience.
Yeah. So feel free to put your questions in the chat, everybody, because that is kind of the theme of the episode. We're going to answer as many questions as we get. We have a few queued up, and that's just kind of be it. If questions get slow, I'm just going to pepper you with questions, Matt, and see where the conversation goes.
Liquid Death, rest in peace.
Yeah, they died a liquid death.
They changed the name of the armless Palmer.
Oh yeah, what'd they change it to?
Dead billionaire. That was exactly my thought. I looked at the can and I was like, dead billionaire. And I haven't seen the armless Palmer in a while.
That's
And it
way
was iced
worse.
tea. Yeah, it was iced tea and lemonade. I'm like, dead billionaire? How does it even make sense?
That's bad, dude. Who's on
It's
there?
to die for, Southern Run.
Have to try liquid death. I saw that they were selling individuals now at Target.
How much were they?
They're like $3, so spendy.
Oh, dude, everything costs a lot now. Especially when you get individual, buy anything individually,
Yeah,
so expensive.
things are just expensive. Like everything is expensive.
Yeah.
I saw this this is very random when I saw this viral TikTok of this guy who had his an online order for Walmart. He just bought a bunch of groceries for like a month. It was $125. It was like 3 years ago. He's like, oh, I wonder if I
Hmm.
could just buy it again. And he bought it again and it was like $320. It's like 200 extra.
Ooh,
Just insane, dude.
I believe that. It's even hard to buy the same stuff as 3 years ago because all the package sizes are getting smaller.
Yeah.
Like,
So you pay more and it's shrinkflation,
yeah.
hyper shrinkflation, where the price goes up and the package gets smaller.
Lyle says, excited about your new QGD course. I don't know if you saw this, Jesse,
Oh,
but
I saw
Brock put
it.
a review on that course. He's loving it, and he's already watched 100% of the videos.
Dude, I saw that review. I'm like, I should really do this course because I don't have a great like D4 repertoire, so I should try.
Yeah. Well, it's for black. Or is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Like you're
I
not
don't.
doing
Yeah,
dynamic.
yeah, I meant for black. I don't really have a D4 black repertoire that I follow.
Yeah, QGD is such a good opening to like at all levels. I think it's similar to kind of what I wanted to do with the dynamic slob, but I think it'll be interesting to see how users feel about the two if they've tried both, because they're a lot different.
Yeah, a lot different. Um, yeah, I think the podcast episode has just started. We're just gonna like go right into it.
Okay.
So today we are taking some questions. Welcome everybody. This is no pun intended, episode number 35. We're gonna do something different, I guess. I was gonna do the whole kickoff, but I think we just rolled into it as we were talking. So small announcement. We have the QGD course live. That is available for purchase on chessgoals.com. We haven't officially announced it via email or anything like that, but that will be coming soon, and we will have a coupon code to share. What is the coupon code again, Matt?
Um, it is Jack. It's just Jack.
Oh, just Jack, Jack. Okay, cool. So coupon code Jack, and I think that's what 30% off of the QGD course.
Yep, that's right. And that'll be for 1 week as of about 2 days ago. And we'll probably extend it a couple days. So if you hear this, it's good for a week.
All right, so today we are taking your questions. So I mentioned this in a previous podcast where we're gonna be answering all your questions. So chat, keep them coming. We have a few questions here queued up, and I can and kind of just go through these ones. I have some questions too that I've been meaning to ask Matt that we can get into if there's time. So first question that came in through email. This is from Tegan. He was curious about the downward spiral. So just kind of in general, how one small mistake slowly leads to a decline in overall performance in the long run. So like you get that like shred of doubt in your mind, and all of a sudden you're like not as confident, and just kind of like I don't know, spirals down from there. I've seen this for with a lot of people like in fitness, like you miss a workout and then you're just totally off the bandwagon, or like let's say you're on a diet and then you have two pieces of cake and you just blow the whole thing up. It's like this huge downward spiral. But the same in chess is 100% absolutely true because mistakes seem to come in bunches and bundles, and a bad position can totally just fizzle out real bad. What do you have to say about the downward spiral?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It kind of reminds me of the James Clear thing with habits. If you miss a day,
Yeah.
what was his advice to do in that case?
If you miss a day, I don't even know. It's been like 5 years since I read that book, but it's probably just like never miss 2 days in a row, right?
Yeah, I believe that was kind of his thing. Never miss 2 days in a row. And one of my things that I think about for a chess game is when you know you made a bad move, don't let that get into your head and start escalating like you just talked about. If you know you made a bad move, you need to find what works for you to reset your mindset. And what works for me usually is if it's OTB, I'll get up from the board, walk around, go get a drink, get a glass of water, whatever it is. And then I try to reset, come back fresh as if it's a brand new game. Because if I don't do that, then I just start beating myself up. Why did I make that move? That was so dumb. I knew not to play that. Now this position's terrible. My plan doesn't work. They get to do whatever they were trying to do. But you got to just get out of that negative mindset and be able to reset. So that's my best advice for me. It's get up, walk around, but you have to find a way for yourself that you can kind of catch that before it gets too bad.
Yeah, and on that same like line too, it's like let's say you're in an end game and you're pretty sure you're winning. You're like you're almost positive you're winning, and then maybe 10 moves later, you're kind of thinking, "Ah, yeah, I'm not sure this is winning. Did I blunder?" And you get in this like headspace of like, "Well, I deserve to win this game, so I'm just gonna keep playing and keep pressing because I deserve to win. I had the good position, I got the good whatever. Felt like this was winning. I deserve to win, so I'm just gonna press." And then you can end up actually losing or pressing too hard and yeah, dropping the entire point rather than saving the draw. So similar psychological principle there.
Yeah. And there's a good analogy for that. Like when you're playing pickleball, and your opponents are back on defense. They're at the baseline, right? And you're trying to do put away shot, put away shot, put away shot, and they're saving everything. You know you have a high chance to win, but sometimes they get the nice reset. They get back up to the net, and
Hmm.
you're still in that mindset of I got to hit that winning shot. But really, no, you're on equal territory now. You got to think of it as a whole new point. Like now we just got to go back to our dinking. Don't speed up anything that's not high and attackable, but you just get in that mode of I got to win, I got to finish.
Yep. And this is something that the top players do insanely well. They're able to just like completely reset and be like, "Oh, I was winning, but I'm drawn now. Like I guess I just got to hold this draw so I don't lose." Or in the opposite way, like I was worse this whole game and now they just made a mistake and now maybe I'm like plus point 0.5 or something. It's like, well, I don't have to take the draw just because I'm out of the mess. Like maybe I can press for more here. So I think of people like Magnus for sure, Nakamura. They're just so good at saving lost positions, just holding on in worse positions, and even turning them around and just like playing what's on the board. Another guy who's really good at this, I think, is Fabi. He's like so objective on the
Yeah.
board. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's a skill set that only the most elite chess players have. I think there's a lot of players that just go on tilt. And even Hikaru,
Yeah.
if in the wrong mindset, sometimes he goes on tilt. And I think he's probably improved a lot since he's become a streamer. But I remember watching him back when in the early days of streaming.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes he would just, I mean, just like Eric Hansen style, right? Like just go raging when he'd lose.
He's the first person I thought of when you said tilt.
Yeah.
I also thought of Hans because he's an emotional player too. I could see him getting super tilty. Okay, next question. Kind of the opposite of downward spiral, but Zen mode, when you're just like focused. It seems like there's nothing else going on in the world other than the chessboard at hand. This guy mentions Josh Waitkin's book, The Art of Learning. I read that like probably 10 years ago, and I remember liking it. It's like when you find a process, when you find it intrinsically rewarding, rather than like searching for a result or searching for Bobby Fischer or trying to do anything other than just like improve the game and just like enjoying the process of improvement. We've talked about this quite a bit because this is another thing that James Clear talks about. Um, Enjoy the process and like be impatient with action and patient with results. Um, but I feel like I get into when I'm really focusing in an over the board game, I feel like I'm totally in focus slash Zen mode. uh,
Yeah.
and it's almost like a meditation in a way where your mind is blank except for just the position on the board. So uh have you been in the like in the mode of where you found a fun process and you're just focusing on the process or focusing on improvement in and of itself without looking for some reward? Have you found that in some domains?
I think so. Yeah, I think there's this like flow state where you just enjoy the moment. And if you think of goals, it sounds cheesy, but your goal could be just play your best, right?
Hmm.
And if I just play my best and keep working at things, I will improve. Because if your goal is always, oh, let's get to the next rating band, next 200 points or whatever, there is always another level essentially. Um, so you may never be satisfied. But I think if you're always just like, okay, I'm going to play my best, enjoy the process, and like you said, kind of get into that flow state, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I was definitely like this when I was training a year ago for my marathon. Like, I really never cared about my times getting faster or anything like that. I just was, for the first time in my life, actually enjoying running and getting out there and just like, uh, getting outside, of course, getting the exercise in. But I was feeling so good after the runs and even during the runs that it was just like a good experience, regardless of if I got a PR or, whatever. So I was definitely there in running. I can get there in lifting too, except in lifting, you're always kind of thinking about, okay, I got to beat my last lift. I got to,
Yeah.
like get the extra rep or something. So maybe that's not the best example. Chess for sure. I am not really like super trying to get better at chess, but I still love playing it. Since we have had the baby for a few months now, I've played very little chess over the last, I guess, since he was born. But I still really enjoy it. I'll have to like play some after the stream today, after the podcast today, just to get a couple games in. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I I think both of us are pretty numbers based,
Oh
right? And
yeah.
it's fun to see numbers go up. But one example I just thought of is the day you went rucking,
Oh yeah.
right? You as far as I know, you don't have any real like metrics to say, oh, I'm
Mhm.
improving at rucking. And you may never develop a metric for it, but you know you're going to get better at it if you just keep doing it. Like you're going to get stronger, you can do more weight, you can go further, more elevation, blah, blah, blah. But you don't have to track anything. You can just enjoy that process. And if you get better, then you do, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been playing with the weight in the backpack, and that's really the only thing I've been like tweaking. Because it's so different hiking on a trail with hills versus on the treadmill versus it's like on a family walk. And so you can't really like compare. But I've been adding different amount of weight. So the first time I went out, I think I just had like 10 pounds of weight in there, and then maybe like another 5, 10 pounds of like a book, a phone, water bottle, that type of thing. Then I slowly ramped it up and got up to 40 pounds in the backpack. And that it was honestly fine for walking, but it's so much weight on the shoulders that it just kind of like made my shoulders and neck really tight. And so I
Yeah.
think that's a little too much. But today when I was we were talking about this before we went live, but I was fertilizing my yard and put 30 pounds in the backpack. And that felt like I could do that for like hours. Like that didn't seem bad at all. I hardly even noticed it. And I got back inside and there was a line down my back. It was like a line of sweat from where the backpack was. It was like dry line, thick line of sweat, dry on the other side. So I went straight to the shower after that.
I believe that. What is this like a rogue backpack or what kind of backpack is it?
No, I just bought a backpack on Amazon, honestly. The only thing I was really looking for was something with a belt buckle. I go to the chiropractor every now and then, and he really recommended rucking in general. He does it a lot, but he said his number one tip is to get something where you can buckle and have a tight buckle around your waist, so you get some of the weight on your waist rather than only on your shoulders, and then kind of like hunch over and like I don't know, move your or like put too much pressure on your shoulders.
Makes sense. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of your posterior chains holding some of the weight.
Yeah. So what I do is I have my two shoulder straps pretty tight. Then I have a belt buckle that I put basically as tight as it'll go. Then there's another buckle that's like up higher at my chest, and then that kind of just that buckles together, and that just kind of holds the shoulder straps in place, so they're not like falling off my shoulders or anything like that. So
I don't know if we talked to,
it's almost
I'm
like a
sorry, go
seat
ahead.
belt, like a 3 point harness seat belt.
Yeah, it makes sense to distribute the weight and like keep it balanced.
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked about this, but Kelly did a backpacking trip like a month ago.
Oh yeah, we
It was
talked about that. Not on the
and she,
podcast, but
yeah, and she was doing treadmill training with the backpack,
oh nice.
trying to simulate the weight and the distribution of it
Yeah.
kind of on an incline.
How much weight was she putting in the backpack?
I thought you might ask, and I don't actually know the answer. I feel
Nice.
like it's around 35, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I don't know for sure though.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty heavy. I think the general recommendation is like 15% of your body weight if you're gonna go for like hours and hours and hours, like not to exceed that. If you're gonna go
Hmm.
out for shorter amounts of time, then you can get away with like, I don't know, probably way more.
Yeah, she
Um,
had to carry all of her food in a tent and all that stuff
yeah.
too.
Yeah, so she was probably carrying like 50 pounds in her backpack on the trip
I
at
don't know.
least.
I'll have to ask her.
Yeah.
I'll
Uh,
text her and then see if I can update us while we're talking.
Okay, great. All right, question on the isolated queen pawn. Do you enjoy playing with an IQP or against an IQP? Or do you play openings that don't tend to lead to an IQP? Or do you just avoid an IQP altogether? I will let Matt go first and then I will go next.
I find myself to be a more solid player and I like to play against the IQP, but I will say it's fun to play with it in faster time controls. I just don't like having the IQP where I'm stuck defending, defending, defending. I always look to attack and sacrifice it when I have the isolated queen pawn. And when I'm playing against it, I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm just going to pile up on this pawn and see if they can figure anything out.
Yep. I learned a lot about the IQP actually from this book right here, Chess Structures. Matt, have you heard
Oh,
of
it's
this
a good
book?
one. Yeah. No, I'd like a copy.
This is Matt's copy. He lent it to me at least 2 years ago, probably more. But one of the sections is on the IQP, and it talks about how to play with an IQP and how to play against an IQP, and it's very interesting. It's basic. What's great is he shows an example of why these principles apply. So one of them is like, okay, you have an IQP, and your opponent forces a queen trade. Well, that's really bad for you now because that pawn is really hard to hold, and it's just a weakness in an endgame. And he just goes through like an excruciatingly painful endgame when you have an isolated queen spawn and you're just doing everything to hang on to it. And then your opponent can basically just like poke holes in other places because you're stuck defending your pawn. So when you have the isolated queen spawn, you want to keep material on board, and you want to find, like Matt said, a good way to sacrifice it or to like push it at an opportune time to, even if you lose the pawn, to like create a weakness that you can like win that pawn back or like open up a bishop or something. So if you know what you're doing, it's really fun. All that being said, I don't really play a bunch of openings that go for an IQP. Some exceptions are in some of our Sicilian Alpin lines or Alpin Sicilian lines in the E4 course. That's really the only time that we willingly take on an IQP. But in those lines are really fun because you get super quick attacks, like lining up your queen and bishop and knight and everything. So those are fun to play too. Hopefully that answered your question. In general, I don't play for openings to take on an IQP all that often, but they're pretty fun ones. Okay, for lower rated players, what are good ideas when learning a new opening?
Oh, and then he has a follow-up question. Specifically when trying the opening during games and not when working through lines. Okay. like on Chessable or other sites. I think playing games is the most valuable thing for chess improvement in general. And if you're playing a lot of games, you have a lot of chances to try your opening lines. So use that game review, explore the openings, um, and just try to find, different ideas with the help of the engine as well. So your opponents will tend to play something that's not in the opening book, not in a course that you have, and you might be on move 6, move 8, move 10. Well, play through with the engine and try to figure out, okay, how do I work against that move? And if you think there's some really strong move for your opponent, play that and then see what the engine does on your side. But I think games are one of the best ways to improve chess overall, and that includes the openings.
Yep. Step zero for so like what is a good idea when learning a new opening? Step zero, honestly, don't get an opening course that's too long. uh,
Yeah.
I am gonna sound like I'm just plugging chess goals, but I am. All of our courses are 100 lines, and that is designed specifically because that's all you need. Seriously, that's all you need. I just saw an opening course on Chessable that got released like last week. I kid you not, it was 1,700 lines and 60
Oh,
hours of video.
what?
You could get all of our course. You could watch all of our courses. We have 17 courses. You could watch them all, and it's 60 hours of video. You would learn like 12 openings, associated middle games, tactics that come from your openings, all of that in the same amount of time. If you get that course, I'm not going to name it, but if you get that course, you are wasting 57 hours because you'll never need it. On top of that, you will never review that course because you can never go through and review 60 hours, 1,700 lines. On top of that, when there's 1,700 lines, you never know, or whatever, moves or whatever. Yeah, 1,700 lines. You don't know what are the important ones and what aren't. Like you're gonna get on move 22 and start a new line. No, no one's gonna play through that. Keep your openings short and sweet. That's my number one tip on learning a new opening. Even if you're rated 2,000, just keep it short, keep it simple. Get a ChessGoals course. I mean, come on. I'm going off.
Yeah.
I'm on my soapbox. Okay.
What
Okay.
else, Jesse? What else?
Okay. Step one. So let's say you have a good opening. You want to get a course where it focuses on similar ideas, so you don't have to learn 150 plans. Hopefully, you can learn more like 20 or 30 plans. And then from there, Matt nailed it. Just play a bunch of games. And at least at first, when you're learning through the openings for the first time, go through the openings and review them in game review and figure out kind of where you went wrong in the early middle game, like when you're out of book. And that'll take you a long way. One way to do this too is to save those games and just put them in a file somewhere so you can review a bunch of those games back to back. So if you're going to a tournament, you can just be like, "Oh yeah, I can't like play this dumb move out of the opening because it drops a pawn, even though it's not obvious." Uh, okay, I talked for a long time.
I'll
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that. If you have a chess goals course, like say you want to learn the Caro-Kann with the chess goals course, here's what I would recommend doing. And this is for essentially all levels, but especially for beginners. Um, I would say binge watch the videos. Try to really watch those videos all in a row without too many interruptions, meaning don't watch one video this week, half a video next week, try to pick up the second half of that video too on the third week. Like really try to watch them with all of your chess time. Do the whole 8 hours. You could put us on 1.5x, whatever. Like we talk pretty slowly. Then do the quick start course. That's just 10 lines. It's one video. Get that basics down. So now you've seen not only the whole overview of the course video format, but then you've seen the most important 10 lines that we think you need to know. Then go in and play your games and start from there, see what your opponents do. And then, like Jesse said, save those games or find a way to keep reviewing them to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, yeah, all that makes sense. I feel like I was gonna add something, but I think you probably covered it if I can't remember it. Okay, do you find much value in sparring against the engine at full strength, either as training games or specific positions such as technical end games? If so, any thoughts or suggestions? That question is by Smithy Q. Chess School's author, Smithy Q. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
I really don't do any sparring full strength, Smithy. I like to play around with it, like we were talking about, where I try to give my human ideas for my opponent and see what the engine would do on my side. That's probably the main way I play with it back and forth. I don't like to just blindly follow the engine lines. I always like to try to give a human perspective for my opponent because otherwise you get stuck in this mode of like, oh, they're going to do the best move every single time. But if I can't find the best moves for my opponent, there's a good chance that they won't be able to find the best moves either. So that's what I pretty much do with the engine. I think it's, if you just play straight up against the engine, it's a little tough for your ego because very quickly they'll get an advantage and then all of a sudden you just get beat. But if you're doing like endgame practice, table-based endgame, whatever, then yeah, I think it's a good idea. Like try to mate with the bishop and knight or whatever endgame you're practicing.
Yeah, I pretty much only play against a computer in those endgame scenarios. Just like if someone flags and bullet and I want to prove that I can actually win, I'll just like play it out against a computer. But I really don't do much of it. One time I had two engines running, so I played against the computer and I had the engine running, and I always
Mhm.
pick like the second or third best move. And so I had like basically no mistakes, no errors, no blunders, but like the graph was like perfectly beautiful in favor of the computer. 'Cause I just wanted to see what it would look like. Like, can you lose without any mistakes, blunders, or inaccuracies or whatever? And you can.
So that's something I have done a few times, and I like this method of training. Like you get to play with the Stockfish full strength engine, and then, like you said, you could pick line two or three, or you can find like a chess.com bot because that doesn't matter. Like if you
Yeah.
cheat against it, or the Maya bot or whatever, it have that play against you with the full strength engine. So it's kind of simulating an opponent, but at your own pace. And you can do that with a physical board. That's another nice thing about training that way.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Differentiating, so this is more of a beginner chess question, but differentiating between tactics and strategies. Do you want to just talk about what a tactic is versus strategy?
Yeah, I've heard this question asked a lot. I think of tactics as just immediate combinations that lead to some sort of change in like the material balance or the evaluation. Um, whereas strategies tend to be calmer positions, I think. Like I'll mix the terms strategic play and positional play,
Hmm.
whereas tactics are kind of the flip side of that. So strategy would be how do I want to maneuver these pieces? What sort of pawn structure do I want? So kind of higher level, slower maneuvering things, whereas tactics tend to be quicker, short combinations, dust settles very quickly. And then I think there's this middle ground, which is calculation, and some of those calculation tactics can involve strategy, but that's like a gray area. So there's not a super clear answer. But like if you're doing mate and ones or mate and twos or forks, that's all tactics, right? If you're doing create a fantasy position, which Silman talks about, where you just say, oh, give myself 10 moves to move all my own pieces around in my head, that's pure strategy.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the extremes.
Yeah, and Silman's book, Reassess Your Chess, is really all about strategy, and it's one that we recommend a lot. Another strategy course we have is Beating Beginners, or is that what it's called? Beginner Beatdown? I can't remember what we ended up calling that one.
Beating beginners move by move.
Okay, yeah,
Beginner
Beating
beatdown. Bully beatdown?
Beating Beginner. So that one is a very strategic course, meant for people kind of in the 0 to 1,000, 1,200-ish range. So that's one you can check out too if you're more interested in strategy. Um, okay, Matt. So how has your lifting been? Have you been doing any lifting?
I've done 2 days back in the gym. I just did a little bit of bench press one day and some squats the other day, but I was just using the bar for both of them. And I filmed myself for the form.
Oh, nice. I've been going hard on bench press. I wanna improve that. So there's this website
Mhm.
called I actually don't know. I think it's like Male Strength Standards or something.
Yep,
And I
I know
think
that site.
okay, yeah, and my bench press is far and away the worst. So I need to get that. I've never really trained it regularly, but I had a friend over and we were drinking and our families went to bed and we went down to the home gym and I set a PR for bench press at 165. So I'll just put up my number out there. I want to for sure improve on 165, like 185, 200, somewhere in there. I think I can get to with a lot of training. But I'm stuck around like 165 right now, and I barely got it. Like it was a big struggle. That was a true one rep max. I don't think I could have done 166.
Did you set your spotter bars for that?
Yes, I always have my spotter bars there, so I basically get full extension. The bar will come down all the way to my chest, but if I have to bail, I can just kind of like roll it down, and
Hmm.
the spotter bars catch it. Yeah, I never lift without those spotter bars.
Oh, I learned something interesting. I was using Chat GPT to summarize what are the most important what was it? Like mental takeaway or mental cues, I guess, to doing the bench press. Right. And it
Hmm.
gave me this like one page summary of the things
Nice.
to think about. Cause I have the starting strength book, but it's probably like 5 pages on the bench press. It's
Yeah.
like just information overload. And I wanted to kind of reset and like go back to the basics, try to have good form, no injuries, blah, blah, blah. Well, I have like an old right rotator cuff, slight nagging, like I won't even call it a pain. It's just like the start of that feeling that I know can lead to pain later.
Yeah.
And I asked ChatGPT, like I described the pain from the bench press or the feeling, and I was like, what do you think the causes are? And it like listed the 5 things. One of the things that I think is the answer, I don't have a very big chest and I have long arms. And I think the pain only comes when like that last maybe inch to 2 inches to touch my chest. Whereas if I didn't quite go all the way down to my chest, then I'm using more chest muscles. But it's like
Okay.
that last little bit. It's like just pulling my shoulders back, and then it's like only using the shoulder muscles until it like gets
Okay.
back into range. So it's just kind of interesting to use Chat GPT for that, I thought.
Interesting.
Okay, but going back to your bench being the weakest,
Yeah.
the strongest I ever was back in 2011. I was powerlifting 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I had a good buddy doing it too. We were drinking all the pre-workout shakes, whey shakes, casein, the whole thing. Like I was taking Jacked, the supplement that ended up getting banned for a while.
Oh,
You'd
why'd
get
it
your
get
whole
banned?
skin. People were dying of heart attacks.
Okay.
Um, but you like you'd get tingling skin and everything, like all amped up to lift. I was
Is
doing GoMad,
wait, so
gallon.
sorry.
Sorry.
So I want to stay on Jacked. I haven't heard of it. Is it just like a caffeine type of thing?
Yeah, and then it has like beta alanine or whatever. I didn't even know what I was taking. It was
Okay.
just at the time it was one of the most popular pre-workout supplements.
Okay. Okay. And you said you're doing
Um,
a gallon of milk a day too.
I was doing GoMad gallon of milk a day
Oh
because
man.
I'm a hard gainer and I really wanted to gain. I was on a dirty bulk, a lot of like Wendy's cheeseburgers and things, just protein.
Hmm.
So, anyways, by far my best lifts were the leg lifts,
Oh yeah.
like across the board. I never got very good at bench or overhead press, even with all the weight gain. And I was at least 20 pounds heavier then than I am now. In my deadlift, I was doing probably 315 for like 2 reps. Squats, I think I was up to maybe like 265 for 3, 4 reps. But then bench, I think I was 160 for like 2 reps.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's a big difference for sure.
Yeah. And overhead, I don't even know. I don't think I could do 135 on overhead. I think it was like
Oh yeah.
115 or something for a couple
Yeah.
of reps.
No, that's crazy.
So,
I wish I would have
yeah.
known swole Matt, Gym Bro Matt.
No, it was just uh I couldn't run. It's just like tree trunk legs and I was fat too. It's not just muscle.
Yeah,
So I
that's
feel much better now.
that's good. Or do you ever want to get back into like lifting 3, 4 times a week? Or are you pretty content with, some, a lot of like more low intensity exercise and pickleball?
I think my perfect setup would be doing some form of cardio, like 6 hours a week, lifting like 1 hour a week, and then doing like yoga or stretching type things a couple hours a week. I really don't feel any need to lift more than like 1 hour a week. And part of that comes from kind of researching some of that longevity stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think if I did barbell lifts a couple times a week with a few accessories, I'm good with that.
Yeah. So what I want to do is like get stronger, which is gonna take probably 3, 4 times per week of lifting to like really build muscle. But then when I'm like in maintenance mode, like okay, I'm fine with where my lifts are at, then I'll cut to maybe like once a week. But yeah,
Mhm.
I still plan on doing some cardio, like some running at some point when I get back into it. And yeah, I think like walking and weighted walking is gonna be my bread and butter, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like as long as you feel somewhat strong, like the cardio seems way more important. Would you agree with that?
I think they're both kind of equally important, honestly. Strength plus cardio. I would put the slider right in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, as a physical therapist, that advice on full depth of bench press and shoulder pain is correct due to the angle of the shoulder. Okay, interesting.
Good.
ChatGPT got one.
Thanks, Southern Run.
It's good to know. Okay, I have one more question here via email. If anyone has anything else, let us know. So, creativity versus predictability. Like a lot of openings can be predictable, so everyone knows what you're going to play, versus being creative and kind of making up your own thing. So, I think creativity in chess is a huge like X factor. A lot of the top, and this is becoming more and more popular. Like all these top players find creative defensive resources and like saving all these games that was basically unheard of even like 30 years ago. So do you think about creativity versus predictability at all?
I guess I think of it more in terms of my opening repertoire. So the first time we play, if you don't know what I'm going to play, I'll throw my main stuff at you. If you have time to prep for me and you know we're playing in advance, I'm definitely going to go creative. I may
Hmm.
surprise you move one, may surprise you move six, but I will look for spots to surprise you. And I think that's really the fun of like prepping for an opponent. In terms of creativity, like mid game, end game, I guess I'd never have thought of it as creativity, but I do sometimes pick lines just to make the position more unbalanced or interesting based on different factors or who my opponent is and things like that. Like I've had since trying to have more fun playing over the board chess, I've had a few cases where I go out of my way to do a queen sacrifice when really it might not have been the best plan. Because in my
Yeah,
mind, I'm like, hey, if I lose this, at least I sacked my queen and I had fun doing
yeah,
it.
right. For me, for predictability, I'm pretty much playing my openings. I think everyone at the club knows what I play at this point, and I kind of just don't care. Like, sure they'll be fine out of the opening, but that's all right. I've probably played these positions way more than them, and they may
Exactly.
like, yeah, and they may look at these positions, and be like, okay, well, Stockfish gives a slight pull here. I think this is a good plan, but then they don't know our chess goals plans, and so I follow through with my plan, or you just kind of like react a little longer, but then you kind of just have a game of chess after. And not everyone's going to know my openings, but those who do probably get a better position than normal. But that's fine. um,
I mean, a lot of successful players are like that. MVL, he almost never switches up his openings.
yeah.
And a more local player, Andrew Tang, for example, he would play the exact same repertoire every time. And he got to 2,500 plus USCF, beating up on people under 2,300 who knew exactly what he was going to play. They were able to prep for him. Sometimes they would surprise him, but more often than not, it was like you said, and he just knew those positions so well. It didn't matter if you were like, oh, I booked up 14 moves for Tang and, I got a zero point zero 0.01 advantage with white. He's like, I don't care if it's a zero point 0.1 advantage for white. I know this position way better than you. I'm still going to outplay
Yeah.
you.
And I can do long division in my head while playing blindfold bullet. Like that's
Yeah. And a Rubik's Cube on the side.
yeah, right. I watched him play a hyper bullet tournament. This is a long time ago on Twitch. He played a hyper bullet tournament blindfolded and won. Won the tournament.
Wow.
15
That's
sec
insane.
15-second chess and he couldn't see the pieces. Crazy.
Oh, yeah. I can't imagine.
Yeah. I am happy to see that he kind of stepped away from chess and is doing some other stuff. I think he's in college. He still plays every now and then, but it's nice to see that he didn't feel like he needed to dedicate himself to playing chess 24/7. That said, he had that 2700 potential, don't you think?
Yeah, it's very possible. He was good from a super young age.
Yep, I
Yeah,
know.
it's hard to know exactly how high he could have gone, but I think he could have gone higher if he wanted to.
Yep. I think he topped out around like 2550-ish, but I kind of got the sense too that he never really trained. He just kind of showed up and played. He trained a lot like playing online, but I don't think he really studied chess all that much.
It's hard to know because I do feel like there are a lot of kids that have the attitude of like, I don't train hard, but unless you've really talked to them, it's like, I don't know if that's, he just kind of acts nonchalant, but I agree that's how it appears on the outside. But to be that good, it makes you think like, oh, maybe he does train hard and he just doesn't really show it, like doesn't let people know.
I remember asking him this. This is probably like 3, 4 years ago when he was streaming a lot. I asked him
Hmm.
this, and he said that all of his training was basically just playing slow games because he would do
Oh,
a ton of calculation, a ton of tactic analysis, and that was what he did. Just playing slow games and going over them with a coach.
so that's a great point. I mean, he was so active on the classical tournament circuits. Plus, he was playing all those fast games online. And like we say, and the numbers show it. Playing more chess is the best way to get better. Like there's no way around that, especially if you're analyzing the game. So if he's playing all time controls and practicing these things in his games and working with a coach, really that's all he needs to do to improve.
Here's a question for you: of the players in the top, or I guess let's say the players rated 2700 or higher, who do you think has played the most classical games in the last 2 years?
Hans.
It's got to be Hans, right? He's going to
Yeah.
all of these different tournaments, and look at his rating. He's up like 200 points in the last couple years, and
Yeah.
he was also someone who would play all the time online. What's a Chess Goals podcast, by the way, without Hans, without mentioning Hans? But we actually should mention Hans because he's playing Magnus in a couple days. We'll save you guys though. We have gone over the SEC almost every single podcast over the last couple
Yeah.
months. But
Okay, I have a question for you.
okay, yeah,
I was listening a little bit to the Perpetual Chess podcast with Ben Feingold,
okay, yeah.
and they were talking about Hans. And one of the questions that Ben asked Ben is, how good do you think Hans will get? Like we've seen this quick improvement. Where is sort of the short-term ceiling for him in terms of what is his current skill level that his rating is trying to sort of catch up to? What do you think?
I do not know, honestly. It kind of seems like he's gonna be in the one tier below Magnus level, honestly. He's gonna be in one of those Magnus, MVL, Wesley So. He's gonna be right there. But I don't think he's gonna be like a Fabi where he breaks out of that, kind of like breaks on top of the pack, so to say. So I could see him kind of floating around the 5 to 10 range. There's also a chance he makes the candidates. He plays for a world championship. I mean, that wouldn't shock me at this point. What did they say in the podcast? I didn't catch that one.
So Feingold had an interesting take. Um, he was sort of saying it's just a huge unknown.
Yeah, oh yeah,
And
that's true.
I thought he was going to say something along the lines of what you just said, where it's like, okay, we know he's going up. He just outplayed Geary. He's a top 5 blitz player on chess.com. Like, obviously, he's going to be top 5 very soon. His rating just hasn't caught up. Ben made a point that a lot of times with junior players, it's super unpredictable what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And they will go on these runs and these insane tears where they gain a ton of rating points. And then all of a sudden, they might drop back down to earth for a while. Right. And like you might not see them gain any rating for the next 12 months, or they might even drop rating. Like we've seen Ali Reza at the very top.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Norderback. Wasn't he number 2 in the world for a short stretch? Like
Yeah.
you can reach these high levels and then all of a sudden you don't impress anybody for like a year even
Yep.
though you're 21 years old. So I thought that was kind of an interesting take. Like Hans could just drop down to 25th in the world 6 months from now, and maybe there's not a lot of hype around him, but he could also be top 10. We'll see.
Yeah. Same thing with Eric Geisy right now. So he's been on a tear. Gakesh was on a tear for a while too, and then he kind of settled down before winning the candidates.
Right.
Another name that comes to mind too is Sam Shankland. He was a bit of a later bloomer, but he won the U.S. Open. He was like +5 in the U.S. Open, like a huge score. and won that, and he was playing super well, and he hit 2700, and he had all the, all the looks of someone who's going to make 2750, and then he just kind of fizzled out. Like, he didn't play as well. I think what really hurt him is Lanier came to the US, and so Sam didn't get as many of like the big invites from the US players because he kind of got booted to number 5 instead of behind Fabi and Naka. Um, and Wesley too, I guess. So yeah, he's kind of faded a bit. It's almost like he has tried to become a chess career guy rather than a chess player or something like that. And nothing wrong with that by any means.
Just
Just
career guy, meaning like coasting a little bit in a way, like collecting your paychecks and just
no,
playing
I
it as a job.
I didn't mean that. I meant like he wants to like write books and makes money off the books and courses and stuff like that.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Um, okay. Anonymous tip from the chat. Matt drew Andrew Tang back in the day. Can you fact check us on that, Matt?
Yes, that's true. I beat him when he was really young.
Wow, Matt has a win over Andrew Tang.
Yeah.
I played Andrew Tang in a simul and I beat him. We played a straight up game of chess. The line that he played, I was just looking at, like, this is gonna sound suspicious, I promise. I was just looking at it like a half hour before that, and he played right into that line. And then as soon as we were out of book, he hung his queen. He just moved his queen, and my knight forked it, and he resigned. So I beat Andrew Tang. I think this is actually a little before he was a grandmaster.
Is this
Um,
because he was too predictable?
no, I didn't know what opening he was going to play at
Oh,
all.
okay. Okay.
um, okay, Matt. Also, you played John Bartholomew. What was your record against John?
Pretty poor. Um,
Pretty
I mean, I
bad.
remember the I remember the very first time playing. I'm like, I don't know if I told this story on the podcast before, so I'll just say it quick. I was the K through 3 Minnesota State champion or co-champion, first, second, and third grade. So like I was at the top of my game for my age at that time. The first time I met John was at one of those tournaments, and it was his very first tournament, and he was beating me. I don't remember how much he was up. We just played for fun. Our parents were chatting, like they just introduced us. He was beating me, and I went on to win. But I thought afterwards, I was like, man, this kid is good. That's his very first tournament. Um,
This was an,
and there
an
was like a
official game you were playing, or just for fun?
just like in the lobby, like he
Okay,
was
okay,
just a brand new player. I don't even know how our parents met, but then we played, and then we became friends, and we started hanging out a lot. Like I would sometimes stay at his house even for tournaments. And there was a stretch where we were similar rating, but I feel like very quickly he passed me. And then after that, like he never looked back, and he's got a really good record against me. Like if you go on the USCF page, he's probably won like 6-0 in our last 6 games or something. Like no draws. Like I can't even slow him down. So
yeah,
it's not a good record.
yeah. It's a anonymous tip in the chat. Matt, you beat John in a tromp years ago. Is that true?
Yeah, I think I don't remember the exact game. I know there was a game I beat him in the Scandinavian too,
Nice. He
where I
played
was
Scandy.
playing white. He played Scandy, but I was like really well prepared for it. I
Nice,
must have I must have been like 15 and he was 14 at the time. I think he's 1 year younger, and maybe we are both around 2100, somewhere around there.
nice.
But that was like right before that moment where it was like John went from expert to all of a sudden 2300 plus, and he's like getting all of his FIDE titles.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that kind of stinks about being, and like I didn't learn anything about chess until I was like 25 or whatever. It's like I don't have these war stories growing up playing against kids. It's
Yeah.
like making chess friends. I don't have any of that. So I'm living vicariously through you. So K through 3 champion first, second, third grade. That's pretty impressive. Matt had
Yeah.
2700 written on him when he was 9.
I mean, back then they had like the USCF magazines that would come out with the top 50 lists.
Yeah,
I was always on a top 50 list, and I think probably my best was somewhere around, I bet Dennis would remember, but maybe like 10th or 12th for my age,
that's pretty
like
good.
individual age. I don't know what age that would have been, but that was, probably around the highest I would get. But now the lists are way more difficult. Like there's a lot more strong kids now than there were back then.
Yeah.
It's not even comparable.
Yeah. Well, cool. That is all of our questions. Matt, did you have anything you wanted to ask me or ask the chat or anything you want to talk about?
When's your next tournament?
Next tournament? That's a good question. I would like to play soonish. I see we have our TD in the chat. Dennis, if you create a slow in the next couple of months, I would probably play it. Don't book me, but I would probably play
Book
it.
him.
Yeah, book it. I my last tournament, I basically did zero prep at all, and I was still washing the baby all the time. But I will try to sharpen up my openings and do a bunch of tactics and play more. I think going into the tournament, I haven't even like really played Blitz in the last like month. So I went in pretty rusty and I still scored 2 out of 3 in game, picked up a few points. So I'm hoping I can play well in the next tournament and pick up maybe a few more points. Um, yeah, that is the podcast. Thank you all for joining. This was a fun one. If you want to get on our emails, so let me just give a quick plug. We had a big sale. You could have saved $300 on our chess goals courses, but you didn't see that if you weren't on our email. So if you go to chessgoals.com/newsletter, you can get on our emails. We will announce deals, sales, and new courses like the QGD coming up real soon. We will announce that all via email. That is chessgoals.com/newsletter. And if you made it this far, I wonder if we have done enough to earn a like. Likes helps out the podcast a ton. Ratings, reviews, subscriptions helps a ton. Thank you all for joining, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.